Conversations from Thrombosis Canada. This is David Airdrie again from the ISTH 2025 in Washington, D.C. I'm here with our co-hosts, Jamil Abdulrehman and Maha Othman, to interview another guest from the ISTH today. Maha?
Thanks, David. I'm Maha Othman. I'm from Queen's University, and I'm delighted to have Stephanie Young from Memorial University. We're delighted to speak about two pieces of her work about patient advocacy. And the first one is an oral abstract, Patients' Experiences with VTE and Their Care Pathways, Results from a Qualitative Study. And then the second one is apparently stemming from that work, the psychological and emotional impact of VTE, results from a qualitative patient-oriented study. Stephanie, welcome today, and I would like you first to maybe introduce yourself, and then we can have a discussion.
Great, thank you very much. So my name is Stephanie Young. I'm a faculty member at the School of Pharmacy at Memorial University and also a clinician with the Newfoundland Labrador Health Services Anticoagulation Management Service, so a clinician as well. We completed a study, a qualitative study, where we wanted to know about patients' experience with their VTE care pathway, and certainly more so about the care processes, because it's something that is not generally addressed in clinical practice guidelines. So we wanted to know their care pathway experience, what worked well, what gaps they saw in the service, and perhaps what other suggestions they may have for improvements in the system. So in terms of how we designed the study, it was a qualitative study. We engaged patients who had experienced, adult patients who had experienced a VTE event in the province, and it could have been anywhere in the province. And they had to be over 18 and able to read and speak English, as well as agree to participate in the interview. And they could choose whatever way they wanted to participate, whether in person, via telephone, virtual. So we left it up to them to decide how they wanted to participate. We had two interviewers, two researchers that completed the interviews, and we transcribed and analyzed the data verbatim and completed a reflexive thematic analysis of the data.
That sounds really interesting. And what did you guys find?
So we had 11 participants. We had 4 men and 7 women. And the age range categories was from 30 years to over 70 years. And for the initial study, for our main study, we had 5 separate themes. So the first was about feeling uncertain about when to get care. So patients they weren't sure about their symptoms, what it meant, when they should get care. And it wasn't usually until it impacted their function that they decided to go to the emergency department. Then when they went to the emergency department, our second theme was the emergency department, from frustration to clarity. So often they felt frustrated with the wait times, with their symptoms being dismissed, but eventually they did get their diagnosis, and once they got their diagnosis, they understood what was happening to them. The third theme that we found was about prompt access to a specialized thrombosis service. This promoted better experience. Not all the patients had access to a specialized thrombosis service, but those who did found that it was a positive experience, and they were educated about what had happened to them, as well as what to expect in the future going forward. We also asked them about their gaps in follow-up care or gaps in care. And one of the main gaps that they identified was that they should be followed up more and followed up for longer. Patients felt very strongly about this. And the last theme from the main analysis was with regard to the importance of shared decision-making and self-advocacy. Patients really wanted to be involved in the decisions that were made about their care, particularly their treatment. And they often felt as well that they had to self-advocate for their care. So those were the main results from the analysis. So, we identified those themes and we feel that these are things that should be included or addressed in, practice guidelines and care practice guidelines.
Well, this is great. Thank you very much for sharing the data. Can I now ask you about the second study and how did this come up and what did you find?
Thank you. So, with regard to the data that we analyzed in the main study, what we found throughout that started to become evident as a theme was regarding the psychological effect of patients who had a VTE event. And it was significant enough that we felt we wanted to pull it out as its own topic and delve into it a bit more, which is what we did. So we came up with the second, so that was our moderated poster session. So we came up with the second topic of the psychological effect. So when we analyzed the data from that perspective, we came up with 4 different themes. So the first one was the emotional strain and uncertainty in the VTE diagnostic pathway. Patients were unsure of, what was happening to them, and it caused them a lot of emotional distress. The second theme was adapting to life with VTE, the emotional stress, lifestyle adjustment, and search for clarity. So patients were significantly affected by, for example, having to take an anticoagulant and what that meant to them and to their lifestyle. And they also wanted to know, why did this happen to me? And as we know with VTE, often we don't know why it's happened, but patients certainly wanted that clarity around why this happened to them. The third theme under this particular area was around the life-threatening nature of VTE that leads to fear and hypervigilance. Patients very much were very cognizant of issues such as bleeding, and often patients would seek care or seek reassurance about what was happening to them. So that fear and hypervigilance certainly persisted throughout their event. And then the fourth and final theme that we found from this particular area was the need for a support system after the acute care process. Patients, even if they had access to specialized care, which was more in the early stages of the VTE event, would often have difficulty in the long term. And some did express that they sought counseling to help them manage the issues around this. And they really felt that they needed support and care throughout the VTE process, not just in the short term. So certainly from looking at this data from that psychological perspective, it is maybe something that needs to be included in guidelines or recommendations about asking patients about whether or not they're experiencing these symptoms, and perhaps trying to target those who are experiencing symptoms to get some additional help for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it's always good seeing the patient perspective to see how we're doing as clinicians and how we need to adjust our care to better serve patients. So what are the next steps from here? What's next? Any new projects coming up?
So with regard to this data, we're just doing the final analysis and doing the manuscripts for publication. But it's also, I think, going to be going back to the organization, certainly for us in our province, to look at where might we incorporate some of this information. And we've already talked about, for example, some of the Thrombosis Canada education, because that was one thing that was identified in this project, was about ensuring that patients have education about not only what happened to them to lead up to the diagnosis, but then what happens after. So certainly it's to try and incorporate the information into care processes.
So that's very good. Thank you very much for sharing your insight. Perhaps we can close with one final question, and I know you may have alluded to that a little bit. What is the importance of these types of studies? I want our audience to hear from you and healthcare professionals as well as patients who may hear us as well. Why do we need to do these types of studies, and how can we use it for better care?
Thank you. I think these types of studies are important because it adds to what we already know and what we're doing, but also brings the patient perspective into the care processes. I think it's something that may not have been, up to now very focused with regard to things like recommendations or clinical practice guidelines. So I think we need to bring the patient perspective into the care of these people.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, Jamil, and Maha, for this great discussion. It's a really, really nice to get this type of insight, and I'm enjoying getting these interviews in right at ISTH, current, and it's pertinent to people who listen to our podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Clot Conversations. Don't forget to check out our website, thrombosiscanada.ca, and the resources that Stephanie alluded to, the Thrombosis Canada resources. We'll put links to them in the notes for the podcast as well. So have a great day, and don't forget to check out our resources and tools on thrombosiscanada.ca, and please subscribe and follow us